Welcome to The Advocates. I'm Aaron Dean. Two big announcements from the Supreme Court on two crucial issues for voters in 2024, and that is abortion and voting rights. The Supreme Court says that it will not intervene in a gerrymandering lawsuit in Texas. That means a GOP-drawn county commissioner's map will remain in place while the appeals court reviews a federal judge's decision. That judge ruled that the maps violated the Voting Rights Act, and critics say GOP-drawn map dismantled the only Black and Latino dominant precinct in Galveston County. The Supreme Court's three liberal judges publicly dissented from the decision. Many electoral maps were redrawn after the 2020 census. And the Supreme Court says that it will weigh in on whether to restrict a key abortion drug nationwide. Mifepristone, coupled with another drug, is one of the most common abortion methods in the U.S. This case will measure the scope of the FDA's authority. The FDA ruled the drug safe and effective more than 2 decades ago. However, critics argue that the agency did not do enough to study the drug's safety. The drug is still available as the legal battle plays out. Arizona Supreme Court is now deciding how the state will handle abortion access. One group wants Arizona to revert to an 1864 law that would ban nearly all abortions. Abortion rights supporters favor a 2022 law that allows abortions up to 15 weeks. That case was brought by a conservative law firm representing a physician who opposes abortion rights, along with the state Senate president and Speaker of the House. Abortion rights advocates in Arizona are working to put abortion rights access on the ballot next November. In Illinois, a judge is overturning a conviction of a Chicago man who has spent 35 years behind bars for a crime he did not commit. Brian Bills was convicted in 1988 for the murder of a 6-year-old and injuries to his mother. He was convicted off of witness testimony identifying him as the shooter, despite not being shown a lineup or a photo. New evidence revealed that Bills was the unintended target of a drug supplier. The bullets aimed at Bills' vehicle hit the mother and son. The state's attorney's office says that this marks the first major achievement of its newly rebranded Conviction Review Unit. The Illinois Innocence Project says that this ends the second longest wrongful imprisonment in the state's history. Switching gears, the Rainbow Youth Alliance is making sure that queer youth of California's Inland Empire have a safe space. In 2024, they will hold their first ever Black Identity Development Conference. Explain to our audience what the Rainbow Youth Alliance is and the work that you all do.
Yeah, so Rainbow Youth, RPYA, Rainbow Pride Youth Alliance is an organization here in the Inland Empire. And I will say this, and so this is why the work is so important to me. When I came out in 2003, immediately my family was like, you can't stay here. A lot of people know, if you've watched my TEDx, you know I was raised a Jehovah's Witness. And so being that I come from a very devoutly religious family, I initially didn't really know anyone and didn't have anywhere to go. And so as I was moving in, to live with a friend of mine, another peer of mine reached out and said, hey, have you heard of Rainbow Pride Youth Alliance? And I was like, no. And so they were like, hey, you should come to a meeting. And so when I got to the meeting, I was able to connect. And that is where I actually met someone who actually helped me raise the funds to be able to afford to move in on campus when I went to college. And so there was just this community of resourcing where they were like, we're going to make sure you have somewhere to live. We're going to make sure that you have something to eat. They were very much very structured in that. And so now, 20 years later, taking on the role that I have, it's kind of a full circle moment for me to be able to say the younger me needed RPYA when I came out and really didn't have anywhere to go. And now I get to do programs. I get to connect with different people and different orgs in the community that are servicing and helping LGBTQ, specifically LGBTQ Black youth as well. So again, it's just a real full circle moment for me.
Yeah, and like you said, you are now being able to help with programming. And one programming we're here to talk about is the inaugural Black Identity Development Youth Conference. Tell us about that. How did this all come about?
Whew, it's so it was long. I would say it was a journey. So I actually have been working with RPYA since the pandemic, right? So there were a lot of things that came up in 2020, and one of the conversations that came up in 2020 was this notion of how a lot of Black youth felt like they were being left out of a lot of the George Floyd conversations that were happening, right? And so when Benita came to me, they had said, "Hey, I know your work. I know what you're doing in terms of media and trying to advocate for Black queer people. Would you like to come do some work with us around Black queer youth?" And I said, "For sure." So I've been working in terms of contractual work with RPWA since, I would say, probably September of 2020. We had done a whole bunch of different things online for Black youth and for for individuals in the community who ultimately service and help, I would say, in terms of like just anything and everything that you can name around the needs of Black youth here in the Inland Empire. And I have to make sure that I specify where that is. So Southern California is much bigger than what I think people know. The Inland Empire is a pocket of different cities. So you have Temecula, you have Chino, you have San Bernardino, you have Pomona, et cetera, et cetera. And so there was just this overall need of Black folks saying, "Hey, we would love to have something for us." So in 2022, me and Benita started again having this conversation of what if we brought in, actually in person, what if we brought in people who could come to this event. We had different tracks, we had different spaces and places for folks to kind of navigate the things that they're going through, whether it be mental health, whether it be wanting to find community. And we just kind of put the call out there, and we've had several organizations, including Equality California, we've had Worthy, we've had the GSA networks, we've had so many different people reach back out to us and say, yes, we really want to be a part of this. And so yeah, now we actually have our two of like the big name, I would say bigger names of folks who are going to be there. George M. Johnson will be giving a keynote, as well as Hope Giselle. And both of them, obviously, we know that they do a lot of work with youth. They are going to be speaking kind of to where we are as Black people, specifically Black queer people, and kind of what do we need to be thinking about as we're going into next year, specifically knowing that next year is an election year. So yeah, it's just really a way for us. It's a convening for Black queer people to kind of come together and really just talk about where their heart and their minds are.
Yeah, and like you said, specifically for Black youth, and
Mhm,
and why, and we always have conversations about why it's so important to pour into younger
mhm,
generations and uplift them. But when we talk specifically about Black youth in this context, why is
mhm.
it so important?
Well, I think the biggest thing is, I mean, I don't know if you saw the Human Rights Campaign put out they put out some statistics and they put out a report. I think it was either earlier this year or it was the end of last year. Excuse me. But I will say, I think that report said a lot about, where we are specifically with dealing with Black youth. The report actually noted, and I don't have the statistics in front of me, but we're seeing, I think it was somewhere around like 38%, or it could be higher, but somewhere around that number, there were, Black queer youth are dealing with heavy notions of ideation. And this is important for me because as somebody who I speak very openly in my work about this, I am somebody who has forever dealt with ideation, and I live with ideation. I take medication for ideation, right? I will say that I don't think that I would still be here to do my work if it wasn't for the network of Black and Black queer people that I have. And so I think that this is why this in particular event, but specifically the work that needs to be done around Black queer youth is so important. It's because these numbers are rising at an exponential rate. And a lot of services and a lot of, I would say, just means to livelihood are not available. And so with that being said, I think we're coming back around to this notion of we won't have, the future if those who are currently in place are not doing something to help shield them and do work for them per se. For folks who are interested in coming to this event, if you live in the Southern California area. This event is going to be held at the the Youth Mentoring Action Network in Upland. You can sign up. It's on jotform.com.
Thanks so much for watching The Advocates. Download the app in the Apple or Google Play Store to stream us live, and you can even subscribe on our YouTube channel. For The Advocate channel, I'm Aaron Dean.